What is the good news rarely mentioned in our community?
Some things I'm excited about, some medical hurdles that have been leapt over. What I'm excited about is CRISPR. We don't hear that often mentioned in our community, but the advantage of what CRISPR is going to offer is a cure to sickle cell anemia. CRISPR is a tool that's used to edit genes, and it's going to allow repair of those genes and cells.
By using CRISPR to edit a gene in a patient's own blood stem cells so they resume production of fetal hemoglobin. Fetal hemoglobin is naturally produced during fetal development, but this stops shortly after birth. It's a healthy form of hemoglobin that carries oxygen and when infused into a patient can greatly improve their condition. This footage, provided by Vertex, shows how the drug is made. After receiving a bag of the patient's blood cells, a machine is used to isolate the stem cells. From there, the cells are prepped for gene editing. The components of CRISPR, a cutting enzyme called Cas9, and a guide RNA that steers the gene editing molecule to the right place in the genome, are added to the cells. And the mixture is put through a device called an electroporation machine, which uses electricity to shuttle the materials into the cells. Once the edited cells have had time to grow and be harvested, they are put into vials and frozen until it is time to infuse the therapy into a patient. Unfortunately, the treatment is difficult for patients. To make room for the edited cells, they must first receive chemotherapy to wipe out the existing bone marrow. This can lead to hair loss, painful mouth sores, and infertility. Patients have to spend weeks in the hospital after the infusion. The whole process can take months and will cost millions of dollars.
So an adaptation that has taken place to make us more formidable for our habitats now can be corrected, which is ironic.
Did you know that not all gene abnormalities are harmful? Some are actually protective. For example, the gene that causes a sickle cell is actually protective against malaria. The lifespan of a normal red blood cell is about 120 days, equivalent to 4 months. And the lifespan of a sickled red blood cell is 10 to 20 days. The incubation period of plasmodium is around 7 to 30 days. So the plasmodium will not be able to complete its life cycle in a sickled red blood cell. And also, what happens when a lifespan of a red blood cells expires? They are sent to the spleen for destruction. So the sickled red blood cells, which have a low lifespan, will be sent to the spleen for destruction along with the poor plasmodium. Porosity of a sickled red blood cells membrane, due to their unusual shape, the membrane stretches and there is leakage of nutrients like potassium, which are the parasite need for survival. So due to this leakage, the need for the fulfillment of the nutrition won't be met. So what will ensue? You guessed it right. Death of the parasite. Seems that there is no survival way for this parasite. Is bound to die.
Something that made you suitable to survive in one climate can be destructive in another.
Hi guys, my name is Tito. I'm 27 and I have sickle cell anemia. Right now it's September and September is Sickle Cell Awareness Month, so I'm here to just basically help raise awareness. Sickle cell is a condition of the blood. It's genetic, one where in my body there's been a mutation that has led to my red blood cells, instead of them being the typical circular shape that you'd find in a normal, healthy adult, they're crescent. And with this comes a whole range of complications. So because of the shape of my cells, they don't flow easily through the blood vessels in my body. They get stuck together and they can't carry that much oxygen. So it causes quite a bit of pain depending on where it gets stuck, which is often referred to as a sickle cell crisis.
And now you can just leap the hurdle and no longer have to deal with it at all if you've been suffering. I've seen it up close firsthand and I can see how destructive it can be. So that's exciting good news for those who may be suffering with sickle cell anemia.
The FDA appears ready to greenlight the first treatment using gene editing. If approved, it would target sickle cell disease, which affects about 100,000 people in the U.S., many of whom are black. Few treatments are available at this point, so this has the potential to be a game changer. CNN's Meg Terrell joins us now. Meg, you spoke to a young patient. He was one of the first people in the world to have his genes actually edited, which sounds terrifying, but could be a tremendous breakthrough. Why?
No, absolutely. I mean, he put it that way as well, and it'll be so exciting for everybody to get to hear from him. This is a huge moment in science and also in medicine, because CRISPR itself, this gene editing tool, was really only discovered almost a decade ago. It won the Nobel Prize in 2020, and sickle cell itself has also been a neglected disease in the pharmaceutical industry. So this is a huge moment on multiple fronts. Check it out.
2 years ago, it was hard to imagine 15-year-old Johnny Lubin doing this for very long. Born with sickle cell disease, an inherited disorder affecting the red blood cells, Johnny has been in and out of the hospital his entire life, dealing with bouts of extreme pain and other serious complications.
It was kind of hard for me to do things like have fun and stuff, because I'd always have to be worried about if I'd have a pain crisis or not. It would mostly be in my back, like my lower back, and it'd always be really a pounding pain in my back, so it hurt a lot.
How long would they last?
Sometimes days.
Until now, the only hope for a cure for the estimated 100,000 people in the U.S. with the disease has been a bone marrow transplant. But like more than 80% of patients with sickle cell, Johnny couldn't find a donor.
Other good news, Olivia Hooker, shout out to her, first Coast Guard black woman. She's 97 years old, and she's being honored. That's huge. She became a Coast Guard in 1945. That's more than a lifetime ago. And to be honored today, she's no longer a hidden figure.
They wanted to make sure that their story was told. They never set out for the purpose of give us money, but they really wanted to make sure that this story, which had been hidden from American history and Americans for more than 80 years, would see the light of day, and that they would have their opportunity to explain and help America to explore this tragic time in American history.
Now, this riot occurred in a prosperous African-American community in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I think it was called the Greenwood community. Is that right, Dr. Hooker?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, tell us a little about the Greenwood community before the riots.
Well, the Greenwood community was a prosperous business section in which all the entrepreneurs worked together, and so it was practically self-sufficient. We didn't have to go downtown for anything, except the bank. We didn't have a bank. And the people of Greenwood were inclined to stick together. I mean, they'd go an extra mile to buy something in my dad's clothing store or to buy something in the man's grocery store. They were very, very loyal to the entrepreneurs that were out there, and the ministers in the churches emphasized that.
Now, how did the entrepreneurs get their money in the first place? This is oil country. Did they get their money from oil?
Not all of them. I'm sure some of them were in Oklahoma, for the land rush, and maybe had a stake in that. But most of them had learned something somewhere else and moved to Tulsa, like we moved to Tulsa from Muskogee, Oklahoma. And I think through thrift and foresight was what they had most of, not money, but they helped each other too. They had a business league and they helped each other. So there weren't many people that actually had oil land. There were few who had oil land.
Tell us about the circumstances of the riot.
Well, what Dr. Hooker is alluding to, as well as in your question, the Greenwood section of Tulsa was the most successful African-American community in the United States. The dollar turned over 36 times in Tulsa. We actually were successful because of segregation. It forced us to do business with each other, and consequently, there was an accumulation of wealth because we supported each other and each other's enterprises.
I agree that I had heard that the Tulsa people were really very rich people, but
well, they were called Black Wall Street.
They were called Black Wall Street.
Yes.
Now, were they Black Wall Street because they invested in Wall Street, or because they spread the money among themselves?
Well, Dr. Du Bois, on a visit to Tulsa, looked and saw all the thriving black businesses there, and used it in terms of referencing New York, where they were the model of business success and operations were, and said, this is the equivalent of what I've seen in New York. This is our black Wall Street.
Now, the circumstances of the riot itself, apparently all of this affluence caused some whites not to be very happy about it. Dr. Hooker, what was the relationship with whites at that time?
Well, at that time, of course, I was 6 years old, and we had very few contacts with people who were not black. And I think very few people, other than working, you know, if they may have an employer, but most people didn't flock into and out of each other's homes and that sort of thing. And the only people who were not black that I had seen a lot of were salesmen who came to sell things to my father. And if you're selling for Florsheim and Kuppenheimer, you bring presents to the children and you listen to my sister play the piano. And I thought that's the kind of personality that all whites had until they came through the backyard with torches.
She's a name that can stand out and show. My folks have been doing this every chance they got a chance. They showed up and showed out. Somebody great emerges. You give a harsh condition and you get greatness. That's the good news. Every time something tough happens, somebody worthy raises from among us.